On September 2, 2004, a beloved Islamic spiritual leader was laid to rest in Damascus, Syria.
سماحة العلامة المربي العارف بالله الشيخ أحمد كفتارو.
نبأ وفاة الراحل الدكتور.
As news of the death of Sheikh Ahmed Kفتارو is reported throughout the Arab world, his passing escaped the notice of the Western media. Beyond the often chaotic and emotional spectacle of such funerals is a face of Islam that the media often overlooks. Beyond the rhetoric of East versus West confrontation, there is a path of understanding that Sheikh Kفتارو and so many Muslims like him dedicate their lives to. Damascus is believed to be the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. It has played an important role in Islamic history since 635 AD, just 3 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad when invaders from the Arabian Peninsula arrived in Damascus. The city soon became the capital of the Umayyad dynasty in an Islamic empire that stretched from the shores of the Atlantic to the Indus River. Though the political clout of the city began to diminish when the capital was moved to Baghdad with the arrival of the Abbasid dynasty, Damascus has remained an important center of Islamic learning until this day. It was here that Ahmed Kفتارو, the future Grand Mufti of Syria, was born in 1915, son to Sheikh Muhammad Amin Kفتارو, a prominent Muslim scholar of his day. The young Sheikh Ahmed Kفتارو studied under some of the most renowned scholars in Damascus, and in 1938, after the death of his father, he began teaching at Abu Noor Mosque. We spoke to his son and successor at the mosque, Sheikh Salah Kفتارو, just after the traditional 3-day mourning period for his father.
The Abu Noor Foundation, which was recently renamed after its founder, Sheikh Ahmed Kفتارو, started as a small place of worship for no more than 100 worshippers.
In 1951, at the age of 36, Sheikh Ahmed Kفتارو was appointed Mufti of Damascus, and then later, in 1964, he was elected as the Grand Mufti of Syria, the chief Islamic scholar and head religious authority for the entire country.
For the Muslim, there is a pope in every country, Muslim pope. Here in Syria, the Muslim pope is Kفتارو. And Kفتارو is a very open, had a very open mind. He has a very open school, and I think that he is the school.
Sheikh Kفتارو called the Muslims in Syria to the pursuit of knowledge, moral commitment to the universal values of Islam, including respect for religious freedoms and interfaith cooperation. In his later years, the Grand Mufti expanded his message to include the protection of the global environment and a call for American moral leadership in the world. Long before the events of September 11th, Sheikh Kفتارو recognized the need for greater dialogue and cooperation between the East and West.
I met a man that I would say was, in my lifetime, one of the greatest men I ever met. I felt as close to him as if he was a brother. And I think that spiritually, he and I were in the same pocket.
In 1975, the original Abu Noor Mosque was renovated to include the most modern educational and administrative facilities available. Up to 15,000 men and women were now able to attend the Grand Mufti's lectures there. And in addition to primary and secondary education, a College of Sharia Sciences was established, as well as an Arabic language program. Renovations continue to this day, and in 2004 the entire mosque was refinished in white marble just around the time of the Grand Mufti's death.
The late Grand Mufti founded this institution, which by the grace of God became a bright Islamic beacon for the entire world, calling for brotherhood among humanity and dialogue and connection between all kinds of people. This is what Islam teaches, and that's what the late Grand Mufti taught us.
During his lifetime, Sheikh Kفتارو dedicated himself to demonstrating the universal message of brotherhood inherent to Islam through deeds and not just words. He made more than 200 trips around the world reaching out to different religious and political organizations, and he invited them all to speak to Muslims through Abu Nur.
We had several private meetings before I went into the pulpit, if that's the proper term, to preach the sermon on December 17, Friday, Holy Day. And he told me that I had complete freedom and liberty in my sermon. He respected me, trusted me.
There is a long tradition of mutual respect and cooperation in Syria between Muslims and Christians.
In Syria, we have a unique and wonderful example of coexistence between Christianity and Islam. This is not from a strange thing to Islam or from nothing. It came through the Muslim scholars who are open and cooperative, and the Christian clerics who share this same quality. And so, we live as one family with our Christian brothers sharing this homeland.
We feel that it isn't an appearance relations, but it's really a fraternity between Muslim and Christian.
And after the passing of His Eminence, the Mufti, many of the Christian brothers expressed their condolences through the press, and their condolences were a great comfort to us.
And I'll never forget, the shocking thing was, I asked him, well, here in Syria, which has a population, I think, of about 18 million, how many Christians are there? And he said, oh, about maybe 16 or 17 million. I said, no, that's not true. Muslims, yes, but not Christians. He said, I am the Grand Mufti. You cannot be a Muslim in Syria if you're not a Christian that focuses on Jesus.
For this, the Patriarch of the Arab Christians said to the Mufti in front of a large audience of Muslims, we don't consider you to be just a Sheikh of Islam, but we also consider you to be the Patriarch of the Arabs.
I was touched with him, spiritually moved by him. And I came back with a profound affection and love for him. And I think it is the Spirit of Jesus in him and the Spirit of Jesus in me. That's where we were able to make a connection.
When the Pope came here, it was possible for him, for the first time in the history of the Vatican, that the Pope go to the mosque. It was the first visit that a Pope go to the mosque, because we have a special relations in Syria. So the Muslim was very, very happy to receive the Pope in the mosque. And Sheikh Kفتارو was the first there, because the Umayyad mosque is very important for Muslim and for the Christian. We have in the mosque the body of John Baptist, Yahya bin Zakaria. He's a prophet who came before Jesus Christ to announce Jesus Christ. So the Muslim respect Yahya bin Zakaria, son John of Baptist, and we respect him. So it was an occasion for the Pope to make a reference for the body of St. John Baptist. He said, Syria is a big school to teach how the religion can live together.
Of course, the message of Islam is a universal message to the full spectrum of human societies. The message of Islam is made clear by the saying of God in the Quran, O ye people. He did not say, O ye Muslims. Rather, he said, O ye people, we have created you of male and female, and we made you into nations and tribes so you may know each other.
Over 9,000 kilometers from Abu Nur in Baltimore, Maryland, one of the first generation of students to graduate from the religious education program is helping to spread Sheikh Kaftaro's universal vision of Islam. Bashar Arafat came to the U.S. in 1989 after serving as an imam for 8 years in Damascus.
Sheikh Ahmad Kفتارو, the Grand Mufti, my Sheikh, would tell us all the time how the West is in need to know the true message of peace and love and mercy of Islam.
Imam Arafat became the Muslim chaplain for both Johns Hopkins University and the Baltimore City Police Department. Ultimately, he would influence a new generation of Muslims to take up studies at Abu Nur. We met one such student in Damascus, an American convert who had become a Muslim some 8 years earlier and taken the name of Halim. Halim first took a rational, skeptical approach to assessing Islam. This is not at all uncommon to new Muslims, particularly those from the West.
I was listening to an argument between a Christian and a Muslim, and I basically didn't feel like listening to it. And so I told them both to get away from where I was, because they were both wrong. And I told the Christian why he was wrong. I used to study Christianity, and I told him why he was wrong, gave him the evidences. He got mad and left. And when I tried to do the same with the Muslim, he showed me that I was wrong. And I was very arrogant. I didn't want to be wrong. So I started to study to try to find faults so that I could go back and say, see, I was right, mashallah. And this didn't work out like that.
Bilal, from Toronto, Canada, who converted a little over a year before we spoke to him, summed up the value of careful consideration.
Of course, when you're born into something, you don't have that choice, like, let me just think about it. But when you come into a new religion, this is the rest of your life here, You're dedicating your life and your time to this religion. So you got to make sure it's right,
Another student we spoke to, Sonia, joined the relatively small Islamic community in Colombia 5 years earlier after similar deliberations.
First, I met some Muslims in the United States. And I just like the way they treat each other and the way they live their lives. And then when I came back to Colombia, I started looking for information about Islam, and I read so many books about Islam, and I went to talk to the Sheikh in Colombia, in Bogota, and I asked as many questions as I have. So I don't know, after a few months, I was just so convinced about the truth of Islam.
The thing about Islam is it challenges. Basically, it's go out and look at Christianity, go out and look at any religion. We know where you're going to come back, because Islam is the truth, and we know those aren't the truth, But any other religion, they won't tell you to do that, because they don't want to take that chance and lose you, They don't want to lose a follower, right?
But most of the international students at Abu Nur are not converts to the faith. Nuwaira, from the Netherlands, was born into a practicing Muslim family of Dutch and Indian descent. As with all the students we spoke to, she came to Abu Nur primarily to study the Arabic language, but only after completing a degree in Islamic studies in Holland.
Islam for me is important in all aspects of my life. I mean, I studied for, 8 years about Islam at the university. Now I'm here at Abu Nur. I mean, it gives me the, impulse to study and to learn more.
Many of those we met studying at Abu Nur came from academic and professional backgrounds, such as Saeed, a Muslim native of India who now lives in the United States and works as a biology teacher. For him, the spiritual discipline of Islam plays a central role in his work.
So following Islam makes you very peaceful and very kind, affectionate, and very understanding of people. So in that sense, as a teacher, it really helps me to be very patient.
Islam gives you that ability to, go step by step. It doesn't force you into learning everything at once, you know what I'm saying? It tells you, take your time, because this is a big thing. You're changing your entire life here, right? And we don't want, you don't want to just take everything all at once and then you just I can't handle this, In
the Quran, Allah says, "La ikraha fi din." You cannot force anybody to accept Islam. So I apply that for everything. You cannot force anybody to do anything. So that's what Islam is talking about.
Unfortunately for many of Abu Nur's students, the issue of force has played a much more central role in their lives than in just academic concerns. Samra, who has lived in Sweden since she was 13, spent much of her early life in her war-torn homeland of Bosnia. There her family came to a much different conclusion about the value of Islam in their lives.
My parents, they were not religious at all, and during the war, they were even less religious. Thinking that how could this happen if God exists and stuff like that. And many of Muslims in their age just forget about Islam, forget about God during the war, because they thought they were left, that the God left them, and that was the problem. While young people like me, we turned to Islam because of the war.
Even though Syria is a distinctly foreign setting for many of the international students, there is still a familiar sense of belonging.
Sometimes I feel I have come home in my heart somewhere. We are different, the cultures are different than people, but still I really like it here.
With a population of over 1.5 million people, Damascus has many of the usual problems associated with a rapidly developing city. But still, residents there generally manage to maintain an easygoing and relaxed pace to their day-to-day lives.
Very peaceful, very secure and very peaceful and very affectionate people. Very kind and very calm people.
This relaxed manner can occasionally prove frustrating to those accustomed to a faster, more deliberate pace.
Sometimes I could kill them all, but I really love the country.
The people here, their manners are amazing, their hospitality is amazing.
Not only hospitality, but they're, I think, generally interested in what you're doing and where you're coming from and what your background is, and you know, very, very different from Europe.
Both the Syrian lifestyle and the dedication of Sheikh Kفتارو are reflected in the learning environment of Abu Noor.
The teachers here, they're Muslims and they're devoted to it, and I just want to be in that environment. I just miss that.
The girls there in Abu Noor, they're like, if I have like 100 mothers there, you know, they're all so nice and so helpful, you know. I feel like home, you know.
Of course, it's a very different environment from what I'm used to. I graduated from university in Holland, and then I came here, and everybody works completely in a different way as they do in Holland, but you know, it's a really nice experience.
The Grand Mufti used to say, I don't want to produce students who will just hang their certificates on the wall. I want to produce a graduate of Sharia science that calls for love, peace, and brotherhood among humanity.
I mean, there's some kind of idealism, I think, behind it. It can't be that they're just teaching to earn their money.
So I studied my sciences all throughout my life. I'm still a teacher, biology teacher, and I used to teach in Chicago, City Colleges of Chicago. So I want to use that experience in teaching or letting people know about Islam. So before I do that, I have to learn myself.
If you get the degrees and the certificates of the best universities and educational institutions in this world, and you don't have those feelings and those meanings, how to be humble, how to be approachable, how to be a peaceful human being, carrying nothing but mercy to the people around you, what are you going to benefit from all of these certificates?
Our Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, said, I was sent as a teacher. I was sent to perfect the best of ethics.
When I follow his way of teaching, it's very effective. For that, I have to be a very good person, internally and externally too.
Islam emphasized the importance of science, information, progress, and reform. The Prophet also said, there is none from me except one who is knowledgeable or a seeker of knowledge.
I think knowledge is very important, because if everyone gets the opportunity to know and to compare and you know, to realize what is the truth, it will be like you know, the best thing that might happen to us.
And when we say knowledge, we don't just mean knowledge of the laws of the religion, but all kinds of science, industry, trade, information, and economics, so we can be true heirs and trustees of God on this earth.
Despite the emphasis on typically Western-sounding ideals, there are still differences in the manner in which the faith is presented, not to mention the perceived value of an Islamic education. These differences become apparent when talking to the Western students.
Islamic studies, first of all, here they always say when they hear I did Islamic studies, oh, subhanallah, and that's, but of course the university in Holland is very secular. You don't, you know, learn all the hadith by heart or anything like that. It's very much from a distance, of course.
Since I live in West, I've been taught to criticize everything. And it's very, very hard to let it go, especially, but you can never criticize the words of God, and that's what's the most important to me. I just take it as it is.
It seems to me the way we study it in the West is very objective.
Once you believe that, you know, the Quran is the word of God, you got to believe everything in it. So I believe that, you know, and I just looking back at Christianity, you got to be able to, like, the book has to be 100% inspired by God. And if the book is not, if there's one mistake, you know, you can't believe in the entire book, right?
But I think the first thing after Muslims uniting is that they should be able themselves to be critical of themselves, of the Islam, not of the Islam as a religion, but, you know, the way history is studied, the way hadith is studied, the way sunnah is studied.
There is a misunderstanding by some Muslims of some of the Quranic text. Also, there is a misunderstanding by some Westerners due to a lack of knowledge about the reasons and circumstances surrounding the revelation of the text. Therefore, whenever we bring up a verse of the Quran or a tradition of the Prophet, we should consider the circumstances of the revelation and emphasize the explanations offered by the most well-versed scholars of Islam.
This is important. Talk to knowledgeable people.
First we got to get the knowledge, right? Because you don't want to get people that don't have the knowledge and then they're going and spreading Islam. That's good it's good to spread Islam, but if you're giving false information, you know, it's not good, right?
Usually the Christian in Europe or in America, they forgot the history, or they read the history not with objectivity.
We also has to have knowledge about Islam, because not everyone does. Even though we are Muslims, a lot of Muslims are born Muslims but don't know much about Islam.
The history isn't always as solid as Muslims make it out to be.
Our Islamic religion is all about reform and progress, and it is a call to a revolution against myth, ignorance, and illiteracy. Therefore, it is the duty of our scholars and clerics to emphasize this side.
There are problems, but we have to clean them up. And we have to spread this message of peace and what God wants, that we came from God, all of us, not only Muslims, everybody of us came from God, and we are going to go back to God.
So I ask for the Christian in Europe and America to learn how to read the history, and especially in the Middle East.
There is a sense of common religious heritage shared by Muslims and Christians living in Syria as well as elsewhere in the Middle East. But misconceptions about even the most basic issues persist in Europe and the US.
God for us is Allah. Allah, it isn't another God of the Muslim. It's the same God of the Christian and the Muslim. Only the word is the Arabic word. So I know that for the American people or for the European people, Allah, it's meaning the God of the Muslim. It isn't right. Allah is a unique God. There is another God. There is no another God. We have one God only. This God, we call it in Arabic Allah.
The concept and the image of Islam is distorted in the West in general.
They lack in the knowledge. They don't know much about us, Islam. They only know what they see in television, and that's only terrorists. It's nothing else. So you're dating that all of us are terrorists. And it's very, very hard to speak to them when they have that in their minds.
I experienced this after 9/11. People started showing up fingers and calling me Osama bin Laden and all that kind of stuff in the college too, which I got offended, but I thought these people don't know. I mean, they have been fed something which some people want them to be fed with, and they don't know what the real truth is.
I listen to talk radio, and so I hear a lot of misconceptions about Islam.
It's not even misconceptions. I mean, they don't investigate at all. They just take, you know, whatever they see and they make their own stories up about it.
Even though it isn't something like clear, you can say it affects me and this and this. It's like the general environment, you know. You see, like everyone is looking at you like in a suspicious way.
it's okay, you're free to go around with hijab. No one looks at you if you're in big cities. But for a woman, there is no chance to get work.
I'm a professional, and I spent the last 8 months looking for a job with wearing my hijab, and it was like difficult, you know. Nobody say we won't give you a job because you're using or wearing this kind of clothes. But I think people think or wonder what kind of person I am because I'm a Muslim, you know.
I normally, outside Abi Noor, I don't wear hijab. So in Holland, I'm not really recognized immediately as being a Muslim. But, you know, a friend of mine who wears hijab, she sat next to a woman in the bus stop, and the woman just stood up and said, I don't want to be sitting next to a terrorist. And you get these stories all over and over again. But, you know, because Holland was for years and years said to be the most tolerant country in the world, but it's definitely not now.
You know, you still get those people, like my family, you know, they're like, Syria, you're going, it's right beside Iraq, you know, and they're going crazy, and I'm just like, you know, Iraq's there, Syria's here, you know, I'm not going to go join the army, I'm not going to go do this, I just came here with a purpose, you know, just to learn the Arabic language and stuff like that, you know.
So one of my aim is to clear up these kind of misconceptions that Islam, and if anybody follows Islam, they become terrorists, and in fact, there's nothing about terrorism in Islam.
We should not under any circumstances say that Islam is the religion of zealotry and extremism. Extremism has no single religion, color or race, and no single country where it can grow.
And you find people that call themselves Protestants, but they'll kill people. You'll find people that are Muslims, and they'll kill people. Jews the same way. And that in fact they claim to be believers but are all atheists. They do not even believe in God. They have only adopted a cultural religious statement to identify themselves.
We have to go back and we have to give an account of our life, every moment of our life, to God again. So these people who do these kind of work, Muslim or non-Muslim, they forget this. They forget that one day you have to die and we have to die.
And God says in the Quran, whoever kills a soul, unless it is for murder or corruption in the land, it is as if he slain all of the humanity. And anyone who saves a life, it is as if he saved all of the humanity.
In this world, you don't find justice everywhere. You find justice with God.
Aside from the perceived connection between terrorism and Islam, one of the most common areas of misconception has to do with the role of women.
In the Western society, they think in Islam women is something less than men, you know, but it's so not like that.
Also, Islam emphasized social justice and women's rights. For women are the life partners of man. In the Quran, there is a great chapter entitled The Women. And the Prophet of Islam used to always advise his followers to treat women kindly.
Actually, Islam was the first religion to give women the rights that the women just got in the last 50 years, you know, in history, after fighting for their rights. You know, Islam gave women rights from the very beginning.
Always when people learn I'm a Muslim, and especially when they learn I'm not married, they always, no matter, you know, Westerners everywhere, they always say, oh, well, you know, within a few years when you're married, you'll be wearing hijab and you'll walk behind your husband. And they all say it jokingly, of course.
My answer to anyone with this criticism is that they should go and have dinner with a Muslim family, or perhaps even if they're uncomfortable doing that, then read a book about the Prophet and his wives.
I mean, in Islam, there is a difference between a man and a woman, and I think we in the West are silly to deny that.
I used to have to fight for my rights, you know, because in Western societies somehow you don't have them, you know. But then in Islam, I don't have the need to fight, you know, because they are there, you know. It's just there, just take them.
Of course, you get some, you know, women who don't know their rights from the Quran and everything. They might get overshadowed by their husbands sometimes.
But as far as my own experience, Whatever my wife says goes. Mashallah. So that's, you know, as long as everything's within the law, then whatever she says goes. You know, inside the house, she's there, I'm not. I have to work all the time. So she sets rules for the house, I follow them. Outside of the house, then it's my job to protect her. So this is the way we have balance in our home.
I never encountered women who are blatantly unhappy with their husbands because of Islam. I mean, you have bad marriages through all the world and through all religions. As you probably know, there are a lot of things culturally defined which gives the man more power, or however you'd like to call it. But I think if these women would be able to go back to their sources, they'd find out they have a lot of rights.
Women are not, as some might say, half of the society. Rather, in my opinion, and according to my understanding of Islam, they are the whole society. They raise half of the society, which is man, and they are, as women, the other half of society.
It's a really good start, like you see here at Abi Nur, Islamic women trying to develop themselves, learn about the language of their religion, learn about the history of their religion. So if they could make themselves and each other aware of the power they have, I think that would be a big step forward.
From the teachings of the Grand Mufti, always that knowledge starts from within your heart. The true knowledge will come when you start by opening your heart. Knowledge starts by realizing who you are and who is your Lord and what's the connection between you and Almighty, because that is going to produce respect to the society around you, to the family, is going to produce respect to the environment, how to be a true human being living on the surface of the earth.
There is a great deal in the Quran and in the traditions of the Prophet about taking care of the environment. 14 centuries ago, the Prophet of Islam called the planet Earth our mother. He said, "Take care of the earth, for she is your mother, and whoever does anything good or bad upon it, she will tell about it." Unfortunately, we find our brothers in the West are more conscious of this issue than we are in our countries, because we have abandoned the great teaching of Islam, which calls on us to preserve the environment, and many of us settled for practicing rites and rituals without even reaping the benefits.
The essence of the educational mission of Abu Nur is to prepare its students to better represent Islam around the world, and to help counter the persistent misconceptions held by both non-Muslims and Muslims alike. The question, as always, is how.
Muslims suffer a great shortfall in regard to presenting our issues in the West, especially in utilizing the media.
In Syria, as in most of the rest of the Islamic world, there is no shortage of information from the West. Satellite TV dishes cover the rooftops of Damascus, and internet cafes can be found in almost every neighborhood. And while there are hundreds of channels now being broadcast from Muslim countries, until recently, after the events of September 11th, few media efforts were geared towards presenting the Islamic point of view to the West.
The late Mufti, may God bless him, for more than 20 years tried to bring attention to the fact that the media can be used as a means to emphasize the universality of Islam.
Under Sheikh Kaftaro's guidance, a media section was established at Abu Nur to televise his weekly lectures, as well as to produce their own content and to establish a multilingual internet presence.
He would tell us about his own experience after talking and giving lectures, either in Europe or in America or in the Soviet Union at that time, and how the reaction from the audience and from the people who are inviting him is so positive and so tremendous that that the whole world is ready to hear the true message. But unfortunately, the means were not available of media, television, movies, and I think still we are lacking that until today.
And I think if people get to know more about Islam, and if the worldwide media is allowed to show what is really happening in here, like in Muslim countries, and allow the people to know what really Islam is about, it will be like really helpful, you know.
I may sound really idealistic, and I know I am, but I really like to have a job where I can somehow improve the knowledge about Islam.
For me, that just seems the most important thing, you know. If I can work with Islam, I can live my life through Islam, I can't see any better job than that.
I don't want to go back to Sweden now. No, because there is no future for me there. Yeah, I know I should spread Islam as it is, and I will do that as well. But what I plan now is to go back to Bosnia, because that's a dream I have, to live in my own country, among my own people, and to work as a teacher there.
We are reformers. That's our mission, and that's what Islam calls us to do. There are many Muslim scholars in the Islamic world, in Saudi Arabia, in Sudan, in Yemen, and Pakistan, who share our mission.
I think that this is the first step to productive change, is informing the people what Islam is, what our daily lives are like, who we are, you know, that we're not some Arab in the desert, you know, we're the next door neighbor, you know, we're the guy going in their house painting it, we're their doctor.
Because if people know what Islam is about, I'm sure there won't have to be any misunderstanding.
How can everybody say Muslims are violent if every time they see us smiling? If every time they see us giving sadaqah, giving charity, you know, if every time they see us doing something, helping the community, how can they then say we're violent? So in this way, I think that we'll get the message out.
Our Prophet said at the beginning of every 100 years, God will send to this nation someone to restore its religion, who will rid it of the deviation of the extremists, the innovations of the careless, and the interpretations of the ignorant.
Islam is your basic nature. The best and the good things of your life is what Islam is.
This is why we see the Muslims fell behind and became weak. This is due to ignoring the methodology of reform in the Islamic agenda, which Islam calls for until the Day of Judgment.
When I believe in God, it isn't enough that I believe in my heart, but I have to believe in my comportment, in my life. And if everybody believe in God, want the peace, he has to work for the peace.
Peace nowadays is usually thought of as between two warring parties, but we call for the true brotherhood between all of humanity. That's what we learned from Islam, from Moses, from Jesus and Muhammad. May peace be upon them all.
I have to respect the Muslim, and the Muslim has to respect me. I have to respect Jews, and the Jews has to respect me. When there is equality between the persons, we will arrive in God.
So our duty as Muslim scholars and in Islamic movements is to be as a mercy for all of humanity and to emphasize this side of Islam. And this is something that not only the Prophet of Islam called for, but also Jesus, Moses, and before them, their grandfather Abraham, may peace be upon him. We look at the monotheistic religions as one in their essence, basics and roots, and it is our duty to call for peace through them all.
Sheikh Ahmed Kفتارو always saw religion as a force that could unite the world, and as his health began to fail him in later years, his son Salah continued his mission.
From the Crystal Cathedral in Garden Grove, California, welcome to the Hour of Power with Robert Schuller.
Less than a year after Dr. Schuller visited Abu Nur, Salah Kفتارو visited the Crystal Cathedral in California in his father's place.
Welcome. 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 Welcome.
And I do believe that if we had seen this beautiful view of this beautiful congregation, he would not have listened to the advice of his doctors, and he would have come here, because this is what he has been calling for more than 50 years now.
Even after the events of September 11th brought the differences between Muslims and Christians to the forefront, the ever-optimistic Robert Schuller sums up his views of the potential for continued interfaith dialogue.
I'm not sure we need more dialogue. I think we need more fun times together.
When Sheikh Ahmed Kفتارو passed away at the age of 89 from natural causes, almost the entire city of Damascus shut down. His funeral services and the procession between the Umayyad Mosque and his own Abu Noor Mosque were attended by an estimated 700,000 people of every faith.
His Eminence, the Grand Mufti, has a special place not only in the hearts of the Syrian Muslims, but also in the hearts of Christians and those across the whole spectrum of a human society. They all have great respect and reverence to His Eminence for his call to brotherhood among all of humanity.
While there may be a void in the hearts of many since his death, the legacy of Sheikh Ahmed Kفتارو will surely live on in his call to knowledge, faith, and human unity.
This great institution, the Sheikh Ahmed Kفتارو Foundation, will always be a free platform for people of all kinds of societies and serve as an open door for all of them to speak through it to tens of thousands of Muslims. This is the method we learned from His Eminence, and it will stay in our memories and our hearts and our minds to strengthen our brotherhood with humanity and to emphasize the establishment of justice and peace in our land.
The last line, after all, is not the theological statement. It's, what is your soul? And where is your heart?
If God wants, He can give us one religion. But God give us more than one religion. But before the religion, He give us religion of our heart. Because we are the icon of God. Before to believe in Muslim, or in Christianity, or in Jews, or another religion, we have one religion of God in our heart.
Whatever the long and often seemingly difficult road ahead offers for relations between Islam and the West, knowledge and the heart must always travel together. In the end, Sheikh Salah offers a simple prayer for humanity that perhaps everyone can appreciate.
I pray to God that a just and comprehensive peace be established in our region and in the whole world, so we can live in paradise on earth before we live it in the hereafter with our Lord Most High, if He is pleased with us.